Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, canammissing project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. Something different today. Out of need. It's -3 this morning out there, and I don't feel like I'm in the shape to go out to the silo and freeze my fanny off while the room gets warm, and hopefully in the next couple hours it would, but I just didn't have it in me today. This is a copyrighted edition for our video channel. I'm Dave Paulides, just a reminder. I'm going to be in here. I've filmed in here before. This is, I call it the research room, and it has all of the binders that have the supporting documents on the cases I've written about. So in case anyone ever comes after me, I have the proof behind the cases. And I do go in here probably almost every other day, getting things out. When I remember something that tweaks my interest, I'll go back in and look and see if there's some parallels to it. So I've been doing that for a long time. But I've got a bit of a cold, and I'm actually not feeling that bad. I sound a lot worse than I am. But I'm on mega vitamins, zinc, about 5 other things my nurse Angie is giving me, so I'm on the mend, hopefully soon. A couple things I want to talk to you about today is when I was at Cal, going to school, getting the socialist background of my world, I learned a lot of things about the Chinese Communist Party. And in fact, I took a history class one time, and a good portion of the class was given by a Chinese visiting scholar, figures, right, to Berkeley. And they talked about the theory of their country and how they're going to convince us that their way of life is the right way. Well, about 8 years ago, I remember seeing a document called Document Number 9. And there was a meeting of all the country leaders from China in Beijing in 2013, and they handed out this document. And it's made its way around the world several times, called Document Number 9. And I think that the few people out there in my world who complain about me talking about China won't give me the 2 cents worth of time to at least listen to what I'm saying about this. And I'd appreciate it if you're on the fence. Give me a few minutes here. I want to tell you what Document Number 9 says. But one of the things it said that are issues to them is promoting universal values, meaning that everybody is equal, because in their world that's not true. Another thing that they stated was an issue was promoting civil society in an attempt to dismantle the ruling party's social foundation. Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? That was their wording from the document. Civil society is a socio-political theory that originated in the West. It holds that the social sphere, individual rights, are paramount and ought to be immune to obstruction by the state. Get that, folks? They don't believe individual rights are paramount, and the rights of the country, CCP, are number one. Then it goes on and says, for the past few years, the idea of civil society has been adopted by Western anti-China forces and used as a political tool. Additionally, some people with ulterior motives within China have begun to promote these ideas. Woo! Well, obviously the people inside aren't doing a good enough job. Next one was promoting the West's idea of journalism, challenging China's principle that the media and publishing system should be subject to party discipline. Therein lies a critical factor in our world right now. I don't care what you say, China has imparted their ways in our country. If you just look at many of the social media sites that are restricting freedom of speech from even our former president, do I care what somebody says on social media, and do I want it taken down? No, put it up. I want to hear it. I want to see it. But there's some people that are really afraid of this. And to me, that is scary. You want some third party to judge what you listen or you read? Come on, folks, wake up. And the foundation of our system, the Bill of Rights, talks about the First Amendment. And the First Amendment says we do have a freedom of speech. Now, if we do have those freedoms and we give them up, the chances of ever getting them back are almost zero. And we've started to see that with the allowance of the National Security Administration listening in on your phone calls, text messages, etc. The U.S. Supreme Court has said that these are illegal, but nobody's done anything to stop it, including our legislators, which is of concern. But right now, a certain side of one party thinks that the way journalism is going now is the right way, and there shouldn't be anything done about it. Folks, the tides always turn. And if they turn the other way, the backlash against what's been happening to some groups of people in our country over journalists restricting their ability to get the word out or controlling what the message is to the masses is just like China. I mean, all you have to do is look at a briefing in the White House when Jen Psaki gets up there. All of the questions, 99% of the questions, a sixth grader could answer them. They aren't tough. They aren't cutting edge. They aren't anything. One or two questions maybe in every briefing has depth and volume. Majority have nothing. They do not want to challenge this class at all. What happened to the old journalists of all time? What happened to them? Where'd they go? And the last one was unwavering adherence to the principle of the party's control of the media. Folks, that's exactly what is happening here in the United States. And it's also happening in Australia too. I'm definitely afraid of what's happening in our world. And unless we really, really change our ways quickly, the CCP is going to have their way with our country for many reasons. But that document number 9, if you get a chance, look online, you'll find it. It's all over. You'll be stunned about what they think of us. But if you look at what they want in their country, it's exactly what's happening in our country. Pierre Trudeau from Canada said something on December 24th that was pretty stunning to me. Said the Western states need a united front against a divisive China because China is playing the countries against each other. Now, what's interesting to that is Chinese military officials have come to Canada to train and observe with their military. They were scheduled to train side by side with military exercises in Ontario in 2020 before they were canceled at the last minute. Imagine that. Chinese troops on Canadian soil training with Canadian troops. That's insane. Why would Canada do that? That is insane. Now, administrators from the Chinese military did come to Canada and did train with them and did learn from them, but the troops didn't come. What's going on in Canada? I got a lot of friends up there and I know they're all concerned. Now, again, everybody knows this. I am a huge admirer of anyone in the military and of veterans. When I read this, I said, what in the heck is going on? The DoD cuts stateside cost of living allowances. 48,000 soldiers affected in 15 metro areas. 21 non-metro areas were dropped, including Washington, D.C., Worcester, Mass., Boston. Those were the ones that were dropped. So military lives in these areas, and they get a cost of living allowance because housing is so expensive. The DoD dropped all those cost of living allowances. Military people don't make much money at all anyhow. Why would the DoD do this when inflation's going on the rise? Folks, I'm sorry. There's only one thing I can read into this. They're trying to make life on the military man and woman extraordinarily difficult so that they leave. Inflation's on the rise. Their salary is poor to begin with. You take the cost of living allowance away from them, how are they going to make it? That's stupidity. I don't mean to rant, but I will. And I will let you know that stuff bothers me a lot. There's a new missing persons out of Placer County, and that's in the Lake Tahoe area. It's from the Placer County Sheriff. At 9:57 p.m. on Christmas Day, the Placer County Sheriff's Office received a report of a missing skier at North Star Ski Resort. 43-year-old Rory Angelotta of Truckee told the reporting party he was going to go skiing before having Christmas dinner with his friends. When he did not show for dinner, his friends called him overdue. Placer County Sheriff's responded and immediately dispatched additional emergency resources to North Star. They found his car there. They started a search and immediately started to snow like heck. His phone was last pinged at 11:25 a.m. that day, and it was turned off. Searchers responded, combed the mountain and the surrounding areas despite extreme weather. Rescue personnel were on skis, snowmobiles, snowcat during the search. They faced high avalanche danger, etc. Why am I reading you that? Because I have written about other people who have disappeared from ski resorts. It's a weird dynamic. But it happens. In fact, I wrote a story about a man who disappeared from a ski resort about 10 miles from North Star. Was never found. How does that happen? Yeah, skis and all. Okay, and here's a picture of Rory. A healthy young guy. No idea where he's at. Suppose he was wearing the helmet. Oh yeah. Lovely. Excuse me for a second while I blow my nostrils out. All right, back at it. First letter, folks. Person says I'm not much of a wordsmith, but I've proofread this twice. I would like to start by letting you know that you and yours are in my family's thoughts and prayers. Times can be very rough, especially around the holidays. My daughter's best friend, a girl who my wife and I considered family, took her life. Just months before she was to be made the maid of honor at my daughter's wedding. It happened in the beginning of this so-called pandemic. The young lady's family and our family were close. We didn't just share our girls, but we also had sons the same age as well. These kids went from elementary through high school, then off to college. We camped together, vacationed together, coached our kids together, but as time went on, the parents grew apart and we just didn't take time to get together much. Our kids, on the other hand, remained close. When my wife and I heard the news of the death, I wondered, what could we do? I was in shock and I was unsure of reaching out, but I did. I simply sent a text to her father and said, there are no words to ease your pain. If you need anything, we are here for the both of you. Since then, we have not seen the parents shared laughs, hugs, or offered support. You know, when Ben took his life, one person sent me an email and said, there are no words and nobody can ease that pain that you're having. I pray for you. That's all it said. And you know what? That kind of said it all. What can you do for that family? Don't ask for communication. Because I know that there was weeks there where I didn't want to talk to anybody. What you can do is, if you know anything about that family, just bring them dinner some night. Do it unannounced. If you know something that they like to eat, just bring it to them. And don't stay with them. Just say, hey, if they invite you in, yes, come on in. Just a gesture to ease some pain so they don't have to think about it some night. Or send them something in the mail. I've done that before too. It's a tough position to be in. Really, really tough. David, I've seen all your movies, YouTube videos, and I've read 2 of the books. I'm starting a 3rd one because I received 2 more this Christmas. I'm 51 years old and was born and raised in southeast Texas. I've hunted all my life, growing up reloading shells as a daily chore before bird season, packing up rifles and gear and heading into the hill country to hunt deer. My wife and I have raised our 4 kids being in the outdoors as much as we could. In between school, reports, etc., we have traveled to a handful of the national parks that you have written about in your books, and some that you haven't written about. When we travel, 99% of the time we were using our RV with the idea of being outdoors and close to the wilderness. Well, before this gets too long, I have 2 stories. Well, I appreciate that. And sounds like a good family right now. It first happened in the Texas Hill Country outside the town of Wimberley, Texas, near the Blanco River. It was in the early 80s. I was 12 or 13. And I, along with my younger brother and 3 other boys who were family friends, got lost. We were all on a ranch owned by a family who hosted a long weekend get-together of RVing and camping over Labor Day weekend. The boys who were going out on a hike were going to look for signs of the Bigfoot that one of the dads told us about while we were sitting around the campfire. He had us all pumped up, get out there and search on what we thought were mountains. Before we left, my dad told me, whatever you do, do not cross a fence. Needless to say, at this point, you'll probably guess what we ended up doing. Yeah, we were on top of a mountain and the fence just got overgrown by a thicket. The idea was to cross the fence and go around the thicket and just jump back over the fence and continue. Being kids, we didn't know just how big some of these ranches are and how many cross fences there are. We walked and walked and walked, and at some point we realized we were lost. And the more we backtracked the way we thought we were going, only to come up at some corral and cattle pen we had already walked by. Somehow I figured out we needed to find the river. If we find the river, we could get the low water crossing leads right to the front gate of the ranch. We found it, and when we got back to camp, we had been gone 6 to 8 hours. This was 82 or 83. There was not bottled water. We didn't carry anything, food or drinks. Thought my dad was going to kill me, but he just made my brother and I and eat, drink water, and go to bed. The parent called the sheriff's department, and they were told that the chopper couldn't be put in the air because of the weather storm that was moving through the hill country. Wind, rain, sound familiar? I'm glad we were found by the river and we just didn't split up. The second happened during the 2017 elk season in the Medicine Bow Route National Forest in northern Colorado, southern Wyoming. There were 4 of us on the self-guided hunting trip using horses to ride from the camp into the backcountry. The first couple of days we were there, it was before the season, and we just rode and scouted for animals. The second day of hunting, it started snowing in mid-morning and slacked up the evening, giving us a brisk 9-degree morning. And the next day, while we fed horses and rode out, excuse me. On the 4th day of the season, it was still pretty cold, but most of the snow was gone except for what had accumulated in the black timber. There was only 3 of us going out that morning, and we set up in a heavily overlooking some country. Before noon, we were back in the saddle heading to higher ground. When we entered the trail that was going to run through the black timber, there was snow on the ground covering what little dirt and deadfall there was everywhere. I was the last in line, with my 2 buddies who were in front of me. They were both knew the area much better than I. They both got away from me and I lost sight of them, and it was quiet, and I could hear the hooves of the horses and a crackling sound. The crackling sound was like what would be heard when wood is twisted. And then it went from crackling to a twist to a crack sound. One would hear a lumberjack yell timber. Then the tree fell, and damn, it was loud. It was loud enough I thought it was going to fall and crush me. The horse, he just locked down. He didn't, and he wouldn't move. He just nickered once. And after the crash, it was dead silent. Almost immediately, my 2 friends were riding back toward me, hollering, "Are you all right?" The craziest thing to me was it was so loud to me, yet I saw nothing, and the horse didn't run forward to get away, spin, around to retreat, move, right, left. It was so loud to my buddies, their first thought was I was going to be hit by a falling tree, and they saw nothing. Well, I am here to say that there's nothing supernatural. I just find that 3 people, experienced hunters, hear a falling tree in what seemed like close proximity to one of the hunting party members, and that member was the last in line, and no one see or saw anything. Very strange. Thanks, Dave. Keep up the good work. You know, Les Stroud and I, when we were spending time in the woods together, he said when he was real young, every once in a while he'd hear a tree fall in the woods, and he never really thought much about it. And then he said, you know how rare it is for a tree to fall in the woods? And he goes, in my career, I've heard it several times. And he says, something else has to be going on because I never see a tree fall. Yeah. As a sign of respect, this is the next letter. To my fellow monotheistic and Christian brothers and sisters, I merely say for educational purposes and nothing more. I therefore hope it is not misconstrued as an unwelcome difference, and if any one of our kind-hearted villagers takes offense, then I apologize in advance. I'm definitely not claiming to know what is taking the victims. I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I merely want to shine some light on a few perhaps important variables to take into consideration when analyzing the 411 phenomenon. Well, let's do it. Dave, I truly admire you. Thank you for everything you've been doing, despite your pain, from which I sincerely offer condolences. Before, I used to follow radio shows and that had you on for an interview, and after I learned about your channel, I've always been looking for you in the next videos. I now live in Brussels, Belgium, and we have a MUFON center here in Belgium too. Been to Brussels, beautiful city. I love Belgium, a great country. Dave, in Islam, we have smart-ass kids who don't like being told what to do, or believe that if God can speak to the teachers or the imam through the Quran, he can certainly speak to us directly through his book. Me and others like me are then told to just learn and memorize the Quran ourselves if that's how we feel about it. So began my journey of learning and memorizing the Quran as a young kid. The Arabic in our Quran, unlike the modern-day Arabic, is a dead language, so there's a lot of searching and self-study involved. Luckily, there are plenty of super smart linguistic and history professors like Abdul Hamid Quick. He's partly Native American and a PhD in historical religions. He converted to Islam and became a scholar in our Islamic history. These super smart people help curious students like me on the matter. My parents are from Northeast African country, you've mentioned in one of your videos. So my experience happened mainly there, but also in Europe. Plenty in Europe, my God. As a 24-year-old, I can now discern this is unnatural, and I could be called crazy even if I considered telling anyone. And that's the reason I'm telling you this. I know you'll know what I'm talking about. One thing which intrigued me in the Quran is the unforeseen dimension existing within our own realm. The dimension in which another creature lives by the will of our Creator. They are called the jinn, a race of beings created from a smokeless fire. You know the type of fire you see rising from the ground where there's a heat wave. Imagine that, except in the shape of creatures. There are 3 kinds. This is coming from a historically authentic hadith. The flying kind, the serpent or scaly kind, and the humanoid kind. Something which perhaps coincides with the creatures coming out of the portal window at Skinwalker Ranch. Maybe, just maybe, there are the translucent beings that are supported by the people who send you letters, or by our kinded villagers who, according to the Quran or the jinn, have existed long before humanity was even created. Now the jinn were known to exist even before the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, except that in pre-Islamic time, the followers of paganism used to worship these jinn. The weird event. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I came outside to a specific area around our house where my father installed a motion sensor light for security purpose. Every time I came to this place around our house, I would always see shadows of both animals and humans moving in one direction, except there was no one around. No humans, no animals around, and coincidentally, no sound. This must be a world which Allah was talking about in the Quran. And like the 7 or 8-year-old, I thought everyone probably knows about this except for me, because I sure as heck didn't know. I always went there as soon as I got dark. Now the Prophet Muhammad taught Muslims in a historically authentic narration that after sundown, the jinn or a group from among the jinn come out to roam the earth. They greatly outnumber us and have their own traditions and religions. They follow Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, although a lot of them follow paganism too. As an autistic kid, it had never occurred to me to tell anyone about this. I'm not sure if you know anything about autism, but it's as if you know how to verbally speak to people, but there's this silent, nonverbal social language which we often don't speak, if that makes sense. I've had a hard time picking up social cues, which makes me look like a fool sometimes. Good thing is I have the capability to learn whatever is placed in front of me, so I'm lucky and thankful for that. Now, let me just say as a side note, I'm not an uneducated person. I have an executive MBA, and I later completed 2 more degrees to become a financial engineer. Recently, I visited my best friend who lives in Budapest, Hungary. He's an American who grew up in the U.S. but now lives in Budapest since 2006. I love him like a brother. When I came back to Brussels, I was ordered by the authorities to self-quarantine for 10 days. Even after a negative PCR, I pleaded with them, but to no avail. It's exaggerated bureaucracy, Dave. It damages society. I've never seen this destructive or suicidal. This isolation does a number on my mind. Sadly, we don't have Mina here. Not even a hotline for depression, just a suicide hotline. The whole thing is messed up, and I sincerely hope Nightmare ends. My apologies for the long message. A couple things. President Biden came out just the other day, and said that there's no place for the federal government in solving this pandemic. Then, not 6 hours later, he was asked if he's going to mandate vaccinated people only to fly. So he's going to mandate a vaccine to fly commercially. And he said he'll talk to his medical staff. But I thought he just said there's no place for the feds in curing this pandemic. And who's his medical staff? Fauci. Read Dr. Fauci's book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If you really have questions about this person, read it. There's no opinion, it's all facts, backed up with where the information came from. It is devastating. Hi Dave, new letter. I'd like to share some personal thoughts with the village as to the current state of mental illness. Let me begin by saying that such an honest and open dialogue as you are presenting was long overdue, and it does seem as though you are no longer just the champion of those who are lost out in the vast open spaces, but also of those who are somehow lost inside their own minds. I hope so. Dave, I'm not a trained professional, so I can't speak as a scientist, but rather as an observer who has lived some of the things of which I'm writing. Just a few thoughts. I believe you have done more than anyone else to expose the connection between COVID and the attendant rise in mental illness, along with all of its too frequent unintended consequence, taking of a life. As it happens, I live in a remote location near the Canadian border. Our community is small, but it didn't take very long for me to recognize it as a microcosm of what's likely going on in more heavily populated areas. Maine, where I live, is a highly vaccinated state. We've also endured some gregarious actions. Apparently this was all to no avail because the nearest hospital, 65 beds, is full and overflowing. Fortunately, living in such a small community allows you to know just about everyone. My wife was hospitalized last June for heart-related issues. As you might expect, we were already on the first-name basis with some of the doctors and nurses simply because they're our neighbors. Neighbors talk to each other, at least they do out here. Now, we've learned about our overflowing hospital is that according to those who work there, as well as the CDC numbers for this particular hospital, there are currently 5 patients being treated for COVID. Much of the overflow is actually people with chronic diseases who are sicker than they would have been due to the lack of cure during the current COVID regime. Sadly, it seems that there has also been an influx of people in need of mental health care who are being warehoused in the hospital. They're keeping them here because they have nowhere else to send them. That's sad. Currently, the waiting period for a bed in a mental health facility in Maine is at best measured in months. This shortfall in care for the mentally ill is despite the fact that our blue state of 1.3 million people has already received billions in COVID money. The remainder of local patients are compared mostly to nursing home residents who were simply displaced due to understanding related to vaccination mandates. The official party line concerning this surge in cases in the overflowing hospital is that it's being fueled by the unvaccinated. According to the narrative, the unvaxxed are either sick themselves or else, through selfish unconcern for others, have made the fully vaccinated sick. I can only imagine that these same hospitalization stats, as well as the narrative, might be much the same nationwide. After all, everyone is reading from the same script. It does seem that our medical and mental services, basic infrastructure, social order, and supply lines are being destroyed just as surely as if they were being bombed into oblivion like Germany in World War II. Strangely, very few people seem to notice that the war raging around them, though. It's probably because the bombs are silent. You know what? A brilliant statement. Someone's paying attention. This caused me to think further about the state of mental health in this country. I wondered if such might have been the case during prior wars. The answer to that question is yes. A sudden increase in mental illness isn't surprising given the current economic and social turmoil. In truth, the sharp rise of mental illness was predictable, with fear, isolation, and facelessness being among the major contributors. It almost seems as if someone planned this human disaster. Looking back, it wasn't long into this debacle before we started hearing about COVID psychosis. And then the question became whether it is a result of infection, vaccination, or a response to the current social environmental issues. I suppose we all have our thoughts on that, but here's a quote. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. H.L. Mencken. Oh, that's a great quote. The fact is, if any of us could feel as though some kind of unconventional psychological warfare is being waged against us, it doesn't indicate that we're mentally ill, just that we're aware. Dave, our core group of neighbors, those who chose to forego the jab, have intentionally broken every social destructive edict which has been handed down. We chose not to risk our community fellowship and cohesiveness in favor of some imagined safety. During this entire debacle, not one of us has gotten sick with the dreaded COVID. The ages are newborn to 76 years old. Sadly, others around us haven't been so fortunate. The village can use its well-informed imagination as to who those folks are. It's heartbreaking. This new form of unconventional warfare has divided us to begin a broader community, a group that would have otherwise stood shoulder to shoulder against any invisible enemy. Dave, I believe that many of my fellow Americans thought that the takeover of our nation would begin with a wave of Chinese paratroopers landing on the schoolyard. That would be Hollywood's popular Red Dawn scenario. Their battle plan wouldn't work, though, and our enemy knew it. For in that case, the American people would have united and shot over one of those invaders dead. Another path to conquest had to be found. Perhaps it already has been. These are just the thoughts of an old man, and they probably don't mean very much. Anyway, for what it's worth, I'm not going to be a willing victim to the very bad sci-fi movie where all the roles get reversed. I guess there are times when you have to do what your conscience and best judgment is telling you, no matter how many are clamoring for you to join them in their own ill-advised march into oblivion. Let the chips fall where they may. This seems like a hill worth dying on. Keep on the good work, Dave. People are alive that wouldn't otherwise have been in, and eyes are being opened. My prayer for you is that our Father in heaven will bless and keep you and also grant you abundant wisdom. I need that. Yes, I do need abundant wisdom. The wisdom I need is how do we convince the people that make comments here on this video that the Chinese Communist Party is our friend, that socialism is good. How do you get to those people? I don't know. I can keep feeding you the information that this attack is coming from within. And that I'm guessing the vast majority of our politicians right now are somehow on the take and have been bribed. The Chinese Communist Party has said that greed is our enemy. Greed is our enemy in the United States. And we're such greedy people, it's going to kill us. I believe that. And I have no doubt that many legislators have been bribed over the years to allow this slow kill from the inside. And if you don't want to hear this, then I understand. Don't complain. Just move on, because I'm not changing. I'm going to keep educating the masses about the truth behind what's happening here in America, both from the COVID protocol on mental illness and the Chinese Communist Party takeover of the world. Now, if you're just stepping into this video for the first time, I've done other videos and I've talked about the Chinese Party taking over leases and ownership of ports and airports around the world. That's their plan. It's a scary plan. And they would control the movement around the world by ship. Very true. So, I appreciate you being here. Thanks a million. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate mail about this one. It's the way it goes. I'll keep talking. I'll keep giving facts to you. And I'm very humbled every time I read all of the notes and emails I get. And I appreciate each one of you. This is a mental health crisis. I have many friends that are in it. I pray for them and I pray for you. Paulides out.